So in that story, a sinkhole almost swallowed a car in Centurion. Now, eNCA's Bongiwe Khumalo tracked it down. Bongiwe, good evening. Thanks very much for coming through this evening. Just before we get to that car situation, just how widespread is the damage to not only the roads but infrastructure generally in the Centurion area?
Well, Vuyo, what I can tell you is that it is quite a lot of work that officials are going to find themselves having to deal with post this, because there's the Centurion Lake Hotel that had, roads, the low-lying bridges flooded around that area, and there was also what appeared to be a bonnet of a car that was stuck there and caught in the water, and we do not know where that car is. And there's also some buildings that have had their foundations, damaged, and then there's this car behind me, and of course also there's various parts of Pretoria, we are told, that are also now becoming flood hotspots. I mean, there's areas like Nelmelpias, areas like Mamelodi, Soshanguve as well, where residents are refusing to be evacuated and sent to a safety shelter, if I may put it like that. They're saying that they would rather live in the areas where they are very familiar with, because they do not want to be moved, and emergency services are going to be taking some supplies to them a bit later on. And these are people, Vuyo, who woke up this morning with flooding in their homes, and it is not some of the only place. That around the province as well, we've seen El Dorado Park, we've seen even Witkoppen Road at some point that was flooded yesterday and even today as well. So it does look like there's going to be quite a lot of work that needs to be done after this.
Do we know, Bongiwe, if there's been any serious threat to life and limb?
When I spoke to EMS earlier, they told me that there isn't any at this stage. There's no reported injuries, there's no reported fatalities, but they continue to monitor the situation, Vuyo, as they say that they're not going to, stop being on high alert because they have not heard of any serious injuries right now. They're still going to be on the lookout, because as much as it's not raining right now, Vuyo, there's concerns around those low-lying bridges where flooding continues, because that water is going to take quite a while to be cleared. So they're going to have to watch those very closely, because there's some motorists that are adamant that they want to use those particular roads, and cars can easily be washed away. So they say that they're going to have to watch the water levels, they have to watch people, they have to watch, especially those living in informal settlements, because they're finding themselves most vulnerable as this weather persists.
Bongi, the car behind you, do we have any details about it? Do we know if the driver got out of it safely and so on?
Well, Vuyo, what we were told is that this happened at around 5 o'clock in the morning. He says he was driving at 30 kilometers per hour, and as soon as the army officials who were here, who were trying to flick for him to stop, as soon as they started, he says it was too late. His car had already gone into the sinkhole. Now, we spoke to him, Vuyo. He's not willing to talk on camera though, but he tells us off camera that he's fine and he managed to get out. The only thing that he wanted was some of the things that he says he left inside his vehicle, and he was still waiting to be helped. And you can imagine it's 13 hours now. It all happened at around 5 o'clock this morning, and he has since left the scene. He says he's gone to pick up a courtesy car that he's going to have to be using in the meantime. But he was looking a bit, he was calm, but also you can see a lot of concern, and he was a bit shaken, Vuyo, because this is something that can shock anybody. And he says when it happened, he just had to accept it immediately and try to think very quickly and on how to be able to get out of the vehicle. And of course those who were around him at the scene were able to assist him in order for him to be able to come out. So he's unscathed, he is quite fine, but he is concerned about the fact that a lot of his relatives do not know yet. And what he was even saying was that in the morning he was getting WhatsApp messages from some of his colleagues who were saying, do not use this road, have you seen there's a car that's stuck there? And he says ironically he had to tell them that it's actually me who's stuck on this road, because they know that he uses it quite often.
Bongiwe, thanks very much for talking to us. That's where we're going to leave it for now. Bongiwe Khumalo in Centurion, where, of course, the floods have wreaked havoc.